Alright, so you've probably seen how cool the final Season 4 is looking. There's of course the trailer that dropped showing off the new gameplay, the new weapons, and of course the new map as well. But say if you've taken a break away from the finals for some time. Well, today I'm here to give you the current rundown on all the changes that's happened in the previous seasons for the finals to get you currently up to date on the new finals season and the meta. So first of all, we welcome back the fan favorite, of course. It's going to be the cash out ranked tournament mode into the finals. Now, at this moment in time of making this video, I'm not entirely sure how Embark will bring it back, whether it's going to be as an integration to the brand new World Tour mode, which was introduced in Season 3, or instead they might do a separate ranked mode. If you're running what World Tour is, it's essentially a temporary competitive ladder placeholder for the finals that they introduced in Season 3 because they swapped the main ranked mode from cash outs to what they called terminal attack. Essentially in World Tour, as you progress through the ranks, you earn points based on how far you get in towards the tournament. So I'm going to say it's kind of up to the release of the patch notes to determine if, for example, you'll have to grind World Tour up to gold, and then you unlocked the ranked tournament kind of mode for that, or if it will just be kind of like a separate entry as it was before in previous seasons. Now, something that's massive for you to know is that if you haven't played the cash out mode in some time for the finals, the actual mode itself had underwent some significant changes. Basically, early this year, they released patch 3.6.0, which was on the 24th of July, and basically they changed the cash out mode to actually tackle a third-partying focus. And essentially they did that by basically introducing first of all, a higher cash awarded for eliminations. They increased that from the $200 you were probably used to all the way up to $500. But as well, they also added a brand new change called the deposit bonus, which rewards players for focusing on the objectives. To summarize the new change, essentially 30% of the cash in a vault is awarded to the team that deposits the vault the moment it's added into the cash out station. So for example, at the start of the game, if you go towards Vault 1, you tag that vault and successfully carry it over to, let's say, Cash Out A, you will immediately get 30% of that amount awarded to your team. Then that remaining 70% of the cash in a vault is rewarded to your team if you are successful in completing the defense of the cash out station. A big change is also the time that it takes to steal a cash out from a cash out station. It actually increased from 6 seconds to 7 seconds. Now, it may not sound like much, but that extra second is really vital in the finals, and it actually has made steals much more difficult and actually buffs teams that are playing on the defense. Finally, there's also another bonus for you called the defender bonus if you are defending a cash out. Basically, whilst you hold the objective, the dead players on the defending team will be able to spend any respawn coins that they have after 15 seconds if they do get eliminated, which is actually different to the 30 seconds that it was previously. Now, just to note, these changes have been released in the video that I'm making before the official patch notes for Season 4, but I am still expecting that this is closely what it will be like when the season is live. If it's not, then of course what I'll do for you guys is make a follow-up video as soon as I can, basically giving you guys an update mentioning all the new changes, but overall it should be similar to the breakdown that I've just mentioned to you. Depending on the time that you last played the finals, there have obviously been some new gadgets and weapons, which are still being used to date, but it was introduced in Season 3, and I feel like it could maybe potentially impact or enhance your experience if you decide to use them. So there were new weapons such as the dual blades for medium and the spear for heavy introduced to the game, which is kind of 50-50, but I think the most successful introduction was the bow on light this season. I don't think you'll probably be seeing any of these weapons that much in ranked games, but of course just be on the lookout because in the finals there are some really good skilled players who have kind of mastered the weapon they've chosen, and with the bow it can really surprise you. So what I'll basically do here for this section for you is kind of run through the most popular weapons for each class in the ranked matches before the potential Season 4 changes and the new weapons that are going to be added into Season 4 too. So for light, a big percentage of players are still kind of running the XP54. I think a lot of players are kind of used to it, right? It has obviously 30 bullets in the magazine, it has obviously very quick DPS as well, and it has a 15-meter drop-off range, so it's kind of a weapon that can be an all-rounder for you depending on your playstyle. I will say, though, that it doesn't really shy away from alternative weapons. You were probably playing the finals when, for example, the LH1 was strong. You would have loved to play the finals when Season 4 released. That weapon was literally over-buffed during the first week or so. But also, as well, the throwing knives, interestingly enough, as well, that actually got buffed, and a load of players on Light were using it. But then it did get nerfed and placed back in line with its other options. We're also starting to see increases of players using the melee weapons a little bit more in the finals. It's actually quite interesting. Like, for example, the light contestant, if you pair, obviously, dash with dagger, and obviously that was kind of popular before, but the hitboxes in this game are very unforgiving right now for dagger players, so if you did enjoy that, of course, then you'll definitely love coming back to the finals this season. It's kind of got this unforgiving, like, range. You'll kind of notice that when you play. Another one, obviously, the sniper rifle. I think that's pretty standard. You probably expected that. But something differently is that a lot of snipers used to play quite defensive. They used to play quite far back, but they're kind of dropping a bit more aggressive now because they've learned that if you snipe melee a player or elbow them with a player, especially if it's a light, you can actually take them out instantly. So players have learned that the no-scoping with Light is actually very effective, and as long as obviously you respect Light's health, again, another example is the double barrel, right? You can go in, drop in, burst your damage, and get out. It's actually very effective. So the sniper rifle and the double barrel as well, two other good guns that are still pretty damn strong. So again, I think kind of summarizing the weapons here, it's obviously a pretty damn good variety of options. Obviously a weapon to call out that isn't as strong right now, the 93R, I think it's actually an underrated pistol. I think it is actually quite strong if you get used to it. But the V9S is really, really weak. A lot of players really loved using the V9S, and unfortunately it's just not there right now. Again, Season 4 can obviously change that, but for you light players, obviously everyone likes to enjoy not being forced to one particular playstyle, one particular weapon. But also as well, just to let you guys know, there was also a new gadget introduced in Season 3, which is called the Thermal Bore, which kind of might catch you off guard if you're unfamiliar with it, but there is a structural damage that it can deal. So for example, you can drop a cash out with it, or for example, in this example here, which I thought LNK did really well, is you can basically open up a line of sight for you in order to help you defending. All right, so for you medium healer chads out there, thank you very much, by the way. Or, you know, not just medium healers as well, but, you know, support providing or even damage dealing as well for medium. The weapons in Season 3 for medium have actually been quite limited, I feel. There's still mostly a battle between the AKM and FGAR. Obviously, the AKM still does have those 36 bullets before the Season 3 patch notes, and the FGAR does still have that kind of slightly longer range, but it has been nerfed kind of back in line, so less players are using the FGAR, I'd say, and actually trying out a wider variety of weapons. But the real steal of the show currently is the model 1887, which I've said before, if you guys might have remembered from my videos using the model, it's very likely that Embark will nerf this in Season 4. It hasn't been touched at all for a long time, and it's just very, very strong right now. Many players are actually calling for Embark to kind of step in and nerf that weapon. Personally, if it was up to me, I actually feel that weapons should be buffed to match the damage output of something similar to the model. But hey, I guess it's just, you know, another topic for another video. The utility that mediums provide is obviously still valuable as well, but obviously just some things to note for you. If you did use the healing beam before to, let's say, heal your party, or the heavy that keeps running in and dying, the overheat timer, so when you use the healing beam onto a player, there's an overheat timer that reduced down from 7 seconds to 5.5, so you have to be a lot more cautious now with your heals. Again, it kind of makes it more challenging as a gadget to use, obviously continuously, requiring better timing during your support play. If you're not all about support, then actually the turrets have been reworked too since you last might have played. The cooldown now only starts after the turret is destroyed, which is interesting, rather than it was deployed, but obviously that might be a bit annoying. However, the good thing is that you can now recall your turret, which is actually, I think, is actually better. So for example, if you hold right click for I think like 3 or 4 seconds, the turret will be recalled back to you, and then after a very small cooldown, you'll be able to replace it again. Finally, for heavy, okay, now this class has definitely gone through quite some changes. You might obviously be glad to note that there was some balancing, some nerfing that Embark did do to kind of bring heavy closer back in line with the rest of its contestants, obviously medium and light. In Season 3, the Winch Claw was actually added, which is, I mean, let's be real, it's just basically Roadhog, right? But basically, if you don't know who Roadhog is, it's good for pulling enemies in, right? And you can also do things like manipulate cash outs, for example, too. You can pull cash outs, you can pull vaults, pull arena carryables towards you as well. But just, you know, make sure that if you are going to use the Winch Claw, if you want to try it out, you're kind of pairing it with like a very high damage dealing weapon to finish off people quickly once they're stunned. Like again, for example, the Sledgehammer is also an option. Again, Heavy actually has quite a nice variety of specializations that you can obviously use in Season 4 that was still viable maybe in Season 2 and Season 3 as well. I think my personal recommendation for you is just going to be kind of like a case of just doing it on a trial by trial basis. You know, try them out in the arena and kind of see which one suits you and your playstyle. Don't be persuaded or moved by another player that, for example, might have more hours than you, is because they're used to that build. That's their comfort zone. This is your time to obviously kind of break out of that and go off of the things to make yourself unique in the arena. So speaking of weapons for Heavy, now surprisingly the Sledgehammer and Flamethrower have been making some real kind of headwinds in the finals. You know, sure, you know, it's not necessarily meta, right, but you will still come across those players who have actually used the weapon a lot, right? They've mastered those weapons, you know, and again, it's quite surprising. You know, if you do go against them, then I kind of say try to keep distance from them as much as possible. You know, maybe the first vault you might lose to them, or you might see them, for example, like Sledgehammers or Flamethrowers. You know, don't fall for the trap of being pulled into an apartment, for example. Try and move the cash outs in towards an open area if you're playing against those melee players. Just then, obviously, you have the range advantage over them, and you can see them coming from distance. Obviously, nothing's really changed in terms of like the Lewis gun and M60. There was obviously some recoil adjustments to those weapons, but you know, the Lewis gun has the supremacy. The SA-1216, it had been nerfed previously as well, but it's still used very, very commonly as well. I actually think the M60 is underrated just because of the amount of bullets in that weapon. But as long as you're not like shooting very far away, I actually think the M60 is very slightly better than the Lewis gun too. Again, just because of the amount of bullets you get. Another weapon that's actually started to gain some traction as well is obviously the MGL-32, and that might come to a big surprise for you because I think a lot of people kind of in Season 2 very specifically kind of saw that it was quite weak. But what's happened is that players have kind of learned about the optimal placements to use the weapon so that its shells that it shoots can kind of bounce in the correct spots, and that's actually very, very deadly, especially if the Heavy is playing a bit further back. They're playing a bit more safe. It's very, very difficult to deal with. So really, if you're in those situations, the Dome Shield can definitely help against them, right? Because the Dome Shield bounces off the shells away from you. But even speaking of the Dome Shield, that had been nerfed as well. If you're a Heavy main, the Dome Shield also got nerfed. You know, that, if you guys don't know, it's a very common Heavy gadget that's used to create cover, and its duration actually got slashed. It got reduced from, I think, 12 seconds all the way down to like 5.5 seconds a little bit later on in Season 3, but players have adapted. Players are still using it because they can see how effective it is, but just, you know, be aware of that. But again, back onto the whole MGL topic, is that explosives in general, right, like the C4, the MGLs, the CL40s, things like that, anything explosive, even frag grenades. There was a change with the damage fall off. It now kind of scales linearly from the explosion's center radius to outer radius, so you might notice that you'll hit more explosives if you do fire them, but obviously it might deal a little bit less damage when you do hit them. So if you're booting the game after some time, you should obviously hopefully notice some performance improvements to the game as well. During the patch notes, sometimes they do say, you know, we have made changes to the performance. Obviously, if we're playing the finals every single day or every single week, we're not really going to notice it. But a player like yourself, for example, or if you're on console, you might notice some significant changes to that department as well. It's actually going to be focused on further in Season 4. They wrote the patch notes in the very bottom. In one of the teaser patch notes, it said, you know, they've made some significant improvements for Season 4, so hopefully you guys get some more frames out there as well. So some smaller quality of life changes. You'll also notice that they have added a team-based text chat into the game too, and that is actually now going to be displayed on screen. You can toggle it off as well if you want, but basically you can share some really nice compliments on your team's plays and not in any way be negative at all to them about the 1v3 that they just tried attempting after being down to the last cash out in a situation where you need to take the steal to qualify. But overall, if you're playing this game without a esport competitive, I'm going pro, I'm gonna make millions mentality, and you know, you're just casually enjoying it, or if you are a casual competitive player, for example, enjoying grinding ranked or things like that, then this game really is heading in the right direction. Sometimes they do make some very weird decisions, but if you kind of stick for it and ride for it in the long run, you kind of start to understand some clarity as to what's kind of going on with the game. So I guess please let me know in the comments why you're returning to the game next season. Maybe it's because the cash out mode is back to ranked once again, or maybe it's because Embark have kind of gone back to that like season 1 theme that we all know and love, or maybe you're just kind of bored of other titles as well. Regardless though, I do hope that this video helps you get back up to speed once again, and I'll be making more videos once season 4 fully releases to cover the new trends in playstyles as well. Until then, thank you for watching. My name's been THiiXY, and I'll see you on the podium.